All right, Weekend Modder here with a quick video explanation of the pin header upgrade sort of service for the 4 GB Corona modules or consoles. So this is a customer's console who has a 4 GB NAND. We can tell by the little offset chip here. I'll throw up a reference image. You can tell when this chip doesn't touch these pins, whether it's this style or the other style, it's a 4 gig, which means that you solder to this pad that's up here in order to read and write to the NAND. So when I do a console, normally a standard send-in service means that I solder in my little SD tool. So I use this Element 18592 tool, which was the modshop.co. He had this little tool made up, and it's totally reusable. And this is what I use all the time. So when I do your console, I solder this in to those pads that are underneath this pin header, and then I read and write your NAND and mod your console, and I take it off because I keep my tool, right? Well, like the premium brick service where I sell you a Nandex and leave the wires soldered in so you can unbrick yourself, what I can do with the 4 gig Corona is I can solder in this little tiny pin header. And this pin header would stay permanently in the console along with this little wire, and I'll explain that more in a minute. And that pin header allows you to use this, the Maximus SD tool, and it's got this nifty little plug-in reader writer deal where you just set that right on top of the pin header. So you plug it in like a socket. So that's connected. And then you can read and write from the NAND using the SD tool. So this just plugs into your SD card reader writer and you follow the normal procedure. So it gives me the ability to set you up with a solution where no soldering is required. You could recover from a brick. The reason these other little wires are here with the electrical tape on them is that in order for the console to go into NAND read-write mode, this pin 15 on this bridge has to be bridged to that little crystal, that little spot that's right there. So what I do is I'll pre-solder, and I'm going to leave these wires in. They actually even have a tiny little bit of stripped exposed wire, which is why I've wrapped them in electrical tape. So you could simply just pull the electrical tape off and then just twist them together. Wouldn't even need to solder that. You could totally just twist it together. And that puts it in the mode that allows you to read and write to the NAND. So you would twist this together, apply power to the console, plug in your control, and then put this into your SD card reader writer, and that's how you read and write from the NAND. Then when you're done reading and writing from the NAND, you would need to untwist these and separate them and then protect the ends again. You would not want to leave that laying in there like loosey-goosey unprotected, which is why it's wrapped in electrical tape now. You would want to rewrap it. But all that means at the end of the day is your pin header's pre-soldered in, your wires are pre-soldered in. What I'll do is I'll just lay them down nice and flat here, and then I've got a little piece of electrical tape I'll just use to hold them down so they're nice and tucked out of the way. And you can absolutely recover a bricked console on a 4 gig with this setup. I think what I'll do is offer this as a different premium brick unrepair that I'll sell it with just the pin header. And then the cool thing is these SD tools, so you can get the little tool that comes with the whole thing for just like 10 bucks on AliExpress. And I'll throw a link to this in the video description so that if you are interested in this. Now, I will caution you, if you're considering modding your own console, this pin header solder job can be a pain, man. Those things are close together. You apply too much solder, you bump them together. Just be really careful. If you're really great at soldering, then shouldn't be a problem or a challenge. But if you're a noob at this, definitely would not recommend this for a first timer at all. But it is a great solution if you want to be able to read and write to your NAND later on down the road without having to do any soldering. So yeah, there you go. That's the a description or explanation of what I mean when I say I'll install the pin header and make your 4 gig NAND read write able to be done solderless.